Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Aether Hub. I'm Simon, bringing you more Magic the Gathering lore. Today, we return to the plane of Kamigawa, a world evolved by technology but still connected to its ancient Kami past. This is the story of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. Our first chapter takes us back to that past, a history simply glanced at in the origin story we got for our main protagonist in Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, Kaito. Before he set forth on his mission to save a missing emperor before a tanuki robot mass turned him into a planeswalker, Kaito was nothing more than a youngster hurled at the feet of the Imperials to look over and train. And yeah, if any of that seemed odd to you, be sure to catch our reading of Kaito's origin story on your screen right now or linked in the description below. I know, the tanuki robot mask planeswalker bit probably sounds a little weird without context. But for today's story, A Stranger in EIGANJO, written by Akemi Bowman, that context isn't necessarily needed. For this is the start of Kaito's grand mission, his purpose. He simply doesn't know it yet. Remember, if you enjoy our content, to please show your support by leaving this video a like and becoming a subscriber. And with that, let's get into the story. Kaito at a young age has been training faithfully with the Imperial forces located in EIGANJO, the capital city of Kamigawa and the seat of the Empire, where the Emperor lives and conducts business to rule over the entire plane. The Imperials are those loyal to the Emperor and their sacred purpose, to ensure peace and harmony throughout Kamigawa between both the mortal races and the spirit realm, filled with beings known as Kami. Without the Emperor's diligence, the barrier between the physical and spiritual realms could fall apart, sending Kamigawa into chaos. It is their solemn duty to bridge those two realities and ensure balance, a mission the Imperials share. These Imperials take in Kaito and his sister, Eiko, at a very young age and see potential in them. They're first watched over by the direct advisor to the Emperor, a kitsune or foxfolk named Laypaws. Laypaws is described as very slender, poised, and proper, the ideal symbol of a dedicated Imperial loyalist. Calm, level-headed, and deadly with a blade. She has lived her very long life with honor, growing a prestigious number of tails, 7 in total, which, for her race, symbolizes the great deeds she's accomplished. Laypaws takes the two outcasts in and begins their training, having the siblings spar with one another, teaching them the ways of the samurai, the loyal protectors of the Emperor and Kamigawa. But Kaito and Eiko don't stay young and obedient forever. They grow up and begin finding their own paths. Eiko is the first to move on to a more specific field of training. Shocking Kaito, his sister has elected to become a Kami diplomat, someone who communicates with the existing Kami in the mortal realm to help settle disputes between them and mortals, which is a growing issue on modern Kamigawa, and one Laypaws feels Eiko is keenly suited for. Kaito is taken aback, losing his sparring partner while also realizing he was completely blinded to her own individual desires and goals, showing Kaito can be a little selfish and disregarding the needs of others. With Eiko choosing her path, both she and Laypaws believe it can help refocus Kaito, who had recently seemed adrift and without direction. The youth had excelled at his trainings both in combat and stealth. He showed so much promise, but still only used his skills to sneak out of the palace and swipe food from corner stall kitchens. Kaito seemed to have no real aims, no real goals, unlike his sister, but perhaps now he could follow in her example. In that, Kaito's training would be handed over to another renowned kitsune, Swift Arms, a tactical teacher of some of the most skilled and loyal samurai on the plane. It was clear to Kaito, his path was not his own. Kaito's future was being hand-fed to him, regardless of his own feelings. This left Kaito with thoughts of disdain for Imperial life, those who pass judgment and laws that affect others without any knowledge of how they live their lives. Exactly what they were doing now to Kaito. He had always felt like an outsider here, within these grand palace walls, and today, he had never felt that more. Still, any distraction from the day-to-day life within the palace was a welcome reprieve for Kaito, and training with Swift Arms was still a great honor to many. He could still learn a lot about fighting, which, for better or worse, Kaito truly enjoyed. so he left to meet his new sparring partner. The training would take place in the Sakura Gardens, which Kaito had visited once before by accident. Finding new shortcuts through the palace was his favorite pastime, and this path cut right through Kyodai's temple, the holy site of the grand kami spirit of Kamigawa. Essentially, Kyodai is the soul of the plane, who existed and spoke through the Emperor, spreading her spiritual message through this mortal vessel. It was this connection between the great kami spirit Kyodai and the Emperor which kept Kamigawa's balance. And in this sacred place was where Kaito first ran into the Emperor herself. Not seeing her face and speaking through a paper screen, Kaito didn't know who the figure was at first. It was just a voice and the silhouette of a girl about his own age, speaking with a smile on her face and a kind, empathetic tone. In that first encounter, Kaito and the Emperor talked for hours before he had realized he was late for training and rushed off. But the Emperor so enjoyed their discussion that she invited Kaito back whenever he liked. From that chance encounter, a friendship in secret blossomed. Surely, none of the advisors, let alone Lightpaws, would approve of such casual conversations with the Emperor of Kamigawa, but the two cared little for the opinions of others and continued their friendship nonetheless. Now, he again passed this same area en route to train with Swift Arms. His thoughts turned to the Emperor, his friend. It was clear everyone was grooming him to serve the Emperor. How could he tell her that's not what he wanted? Within the garden stood the great Kitsune samurai, Swiftpaws, donning the glorious imperial armor of those who serve the Emperor. He's excited to receive this pupil from Lightpaws, but is worried that Kaito is not samurai material. His skills may be promising, but his dedication seemed, well, lacking. Kaito was glad to hear of his new master's misgivings. Maybe there was hope that he could flunk out. Regardless, their unique training course was in need of a new sparring partner, and he would be fulfilling that role. Swiftpaw bows lower than he had ever seen a Kitsune bow before as his new partner walked in. It was a young girl, sleek with white hair. She didn't look familiar, but when she opened her mouth to thank Swiftpaws for his service, it was clear. It was the voice of the Emperor, no longer taking only the shape of a shadow, but here, full of life and light. His new training partner was the Emperor of Kamigawa. However, there wasn't time for pleasantries. Kaito wasn't even sure if the Emperor recognized him yet by his voice. They were given their wooden swords, and the sparring began. Kaito struck first, crashing the fake weapon down only to be deflected by the Emperor's own. Swift Arms had said that Kaito was to treat this like any other lesson, regardless of his opponent. So Kaito gritted his teeth and hoped the Emperor could forgive his aggression, jumping in, relentlessly striking at the Emperor and knocking her back to the edge of their sparring circle. She was a breathless lake, calm and precise, while Kaito was a raging tsunami, strong and directionless. Finally taking an opening, the Emperor parried a blow and grabbed the hilt of Kaito's weapon, spinning and kicking him in the chest, dislodging the sword and taking it for herself. When Kaito finally recovered, he was greeted by two wooden swords crossed at his neck, and a smiling Emperor who clearly recognized her friend. Kaito said nothing, but inside, he glowed with happiness. This training went on over the years, while the pair still met in secret to talk as friends without the watchful eye of their instructor. Though Kaito loved these regular chats and wished for nothing to change, change always comes, and Kamigawa is changing now. Whispers of a group called the Uprisers gaining momentum to end the imperial rule. A group known as the Futurists, who pushed the bounds of technology far past regulated means, sending emissaries to the Emperor to lower regulations into dangerous territories. The world was changing, and Kaito couldn't control it. One day, while skulking about the rooftops of EIGANJO, Kaito spies a train of futurists coming in from their floating city of Otawara, and follows a suspicious moonfolk into the temple gardens where he seems to be doing something a bit shady. The futurists aren't known for their love of the Emperor, and he was only looking out for his friend. The moonfolk brings out a small origami drone shaped like a crane, some sort of messenger tech that was forbidden within the palace. Kaito appeared behind the man, demanding to know what a futurist was doing, hiding in a garden using unpermitted tech. Though young, the moonfolk saw something behind Kaito's eyes. Frustration, concern, an iron will that was being hammered by societal restraints. The moonfolk introduced himself as Katsumasa and explained how the drone was simply a friendly message. Still, Kaito pushed the topic of unregistered tech and its dangers. It was this talk, the talk of imperialists, that Katsumasa and the Futurists were fighting against, beseeching the Emperor and her advisors to loosen these regulations. To Katsumasa, it was a personal endeavor. The factory where his parents worked wasn't up to code, and no new tech was provided for safety, leading to a valve break and poison gas leaking undetected. Katsumasa's parents died because of a system that failed them, because of regulations meant only to control them and not to save their lives. That story struck a chord with Kaito. It was similar to his own experiences. His parents too worked in a highly regulated, low-means factory in the Undercity. They were exposed to radiation and became very sick. Little was available for them in the Undercity, but his father managed to locate a medtech on the black market, one that wasn't authorized for use yet. The Imperials came in and arrested his father for the contraband. He died in prison. Soon after, his mother too succumbed to her illness. The dots began to connect. What the Futurists were fighting for was a chance to improve lives, something the Imperials' regulations never did. Lightpaws loved to preach that regulations were there as a means to protect balance. Unfettered tech could lead to new weapons and the destruction of the Imperial system. Lies built on fear. Lies that cost people's lives. Lives those within the palace walls never understood nor cared about. With kind words and sympathy, Katsumasa hands Kaito a small crane drone, illegal tech to the Imperials, which Kaito accepts as he too accepts a new reality, that what he is taught and how he feels would never again match. Since that day, his conversations with the Emperor took on a more political tone. He would discuss the Futurists and their goals, how regulations were changed around Kamigawa's poorest and neediest. Though clearly the Emperor didn't really agree with these thoughts, she didn't stop her friend from sharing them either, which only proved to make Kaito's opinions feel more validated. But the Emperor had a duty, not only to herself or to her friend, but to Kamigawa, and these notions were something that she couldn't act upon, and her advisors needed to know about. As Kaito heads for training, he's surprised to see his old mentor Lightpaws again rather than Swift Arms and his sparring partner. It's revealed that the Emperor told others about his futurist sympathy, and Lightpaws again explains how these ideas are dangerous to the balance of Kamigawa. Kaito retorts, quote, "A single path only works when everyone is equal. The Imperials are safe in EIGANJO. There is harmony with Kami, and technology is available whenever they need it. But there are places on Kamigawa that don't have those luxuries. People who need to push the boundaries of tech because their world isn't designed for comfort. And you shut it down. You control them because you can't imagine a plane where a civilian might need to invent different equipment to keep themselves alive and safe. You limit access to anyone who doesn't have the right permits, without any regard to those who can't afford them. Where's the balance in that? You are killing people." To which Lightpaws simply says, "That is enough, Kaito. Those permits and regulations ensure technology is safe. You are using radical words that have no place in the Imperial Palace." And Kaito utters the words he has felt for so long, but has only just mustered the courage to speak aloud. "What you mean is that I have no place here." That very night, as Kaito struggled with the thought of his broken relationship with Lightpaws, he's startled by the sound of alarm bells ringing. Quickly grabbing his crane drone, he staggers from bed, running down bustling hallways crowded by Imperial guards and samurai, all looking just as confused as he did. His first thought is that of his sister, Eiko. Heading towards her room, Kaito bumps into her in the corridor. She tells him that she's heard others speak of an intruder in the palace, before making her way to an exit and safety. Kaito could have joined her. He could care little what happens to this place, the place that never truly accepted him. But it wasn't the palace he looked to protect. It was his friend, the Emperor. Though he had never learned her name, yet another rule set up by the Imperials to control even the Emperor, it seemed, Kaito cared for her all the same. Using his crane drone, he was able to find darkened passages free of samurai and distractions. If an intruder lasted this long within the walls of the palace, there's no way they took a conventional route. The samurai were strong and true, but they didn't understand the dark. They didn't walk in the shadows. They didn't know how to climb the walls as he did. He rushed to the Emperor's chambers. Once there, the drone showed Kaito that the Emperor wasn't inside, but neither was any intruder. But the doorway to Kyodai's chamber, the sacred room of the greatest kami of Kamigawa, was left open. Kaito had never seen Kyodai. That was a privilege for only the Emperor of the Plane. But beyond that door, he heard a strange sound that echoed through the silent halls. A weird chorus of 3 different wails, all calling out in pain. He didn't care what was beyond this door. If his friend was past it, being hurt, there was nothing that was going to stop him. Rushing in, Kato's greeted by a grand and ornate hall, a mixture of both natural beauty and man-made pageantries, fitting for the guardian spirit of Kamigawa, the bridge between the mortal and spiritual realms. And then before him, the great Kami itself. It was enormous, with hundreds of golden, human-sized arms forming her belly and limbs. Gold spheres trailed along the fans of her back, with a large black one embedded in her forehead. With a pointed mouth like a dragon, 3 masks lined Kyodai's face. They represented Michiko Konda, the first emperor to channel with Kyodai. The emperor was nowhere to be found, and Kyodai writhed and lashed out as if in pain or confused. Kaito wanted to call for the guards, but his eyes then caught another figure, a man rising behind Kyodai. He was dressed in a chrome-like armor with a long metal prosthetic where one of his natural arms once was. It was tech unlike anything Kaito had ever seen before, a twisting, otherworldly tapestry of an alloy he couldn't place, that all tapered off into a distinctly weapon-like claw. The man sneered at him with a smugness that could match any imperial. His eyes glowed just as his arm did, with a shade of pink that Kaito couldn't match to anything else on Kamigawa. Kaito was unarmed, but that didn't matter. This man wasn't meant to be in Kyodai's chamber. He had to be the intruder, and had to know where the Emperor was. Chasing the man over the rooftops, Kaito couldn't keep up with his speed, only catching glances at the man's face as he kept pace. Quickly, he grabbed a loose roof tile and flung it at his target, hitting him in the side of the head with pinpoint accuracy. He finally grabbed the intruder's attention. The stranger didn't run to attack Kaito. He simply grimaced and pointed towards the boy's wrist, the one which contained his drone tech. While normally the drone would be released from his wristband, now Kaito felt a powerful tug from nowhere, grabbing at his wrist and his device. Kaito wasn't prepared for it, and the force flung him from the rooftops and onto a bed of sand below. He watched helplessly as the intruder escaped. As Kaito returns to Kyodai's chamber, it's clear to him and everyone else that the Emperor was nowhere to be found. Though she was not with the stranger, he must have been responsible. Kaito meets up with high-ranking guards and advisors who had gathered in the Great Spirit's Hall, including Leipaws. Surely, she would listen, and maybe they could catch this guy. But in explaining his story and the things this stranger did, his clothes, his highly advanced tech, his power to manipulate other people's tech from a distance, Leipaws only came to the conclusion that the assailant must have been a futurist with some new illegal technology who kidnapped the Emperor in order to force her to change regulation laws. In her mind, it was a simple and easy to believe truth, and if Kaito hadn't seen the man himself, he would have believed it too. But this man wasn't a futurist. He didn't dress like them, act like them. He was unlike anything he's ever seen on Kamigawa. There had to be more. They needed to look deeper. But Imperials are, at their core, cautious and safe. It was safe for them to see enemies in the futurists, and place the blame with them. Nobody stopped to listen, not to Kaito. Quote, "He's getting away. If someone doesn't do something, we might never see the Emperor again." To which Leipaws says, "Go to your room, Kaito. This is an Imperial matter," solidifying that Kaito himself would never be seen as an Imperial. That night, Kaito climbed his final wall in EIGANJO, and he didn't look back. He will search Kamigawa for the man with the metal arm. He will find the Emperor, his friend, and bring her home. Before, the Imperials said he lacked purpose. Well, tonight, he found it. With this first chapter, since the origin story we got for Kaito, this filled in a lot of missing blanks that we had about this new Planeswalker's history and youth growing up in the palace and becoming friends with the Emperor. Before, we didn't really know much about how they became friends or what happened to Kaito's parents, and this story here really fleshed out the character's past. It also leads us to Kaito's mindset and personality, why he has a problem with the Imperials but still cares for the Emperor, and how just ideologically he cannot be the true samurai they wanted him to be, and thus why he becomes a rogue, really. Though this was sort of a recap to Kaito's origins, it really helps to fill out the character a lot, and basically leads us right into the story we covered on his origins, which you can find on your screen right now or linked in the description below, so you can get all caught up with the story of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. So guys, with that, Chapter 1 of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty is in the books. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. This was our first time seeing artwork depicting the new Kyodai, the guardian spirit of Kamigawa fans will recognize from the original set's story way back in the day. And honestly, I did not expect the Kami to look like this. I know she's meant to represent the fusing of flesh and spirit when Okagachi was defeated, and I understand Kami on Kamigawa can look weird, but for being like this grand protector of Kamigawa, Kyodai kinda looking horrific, not gonna lie. But hey, that's just me, not trying to pass judgment, but what do you think? Anyway, thank you all so much for joining me today for Chapter 1 of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty's story. If you liked the video, please make sure you show your support by hitting the like button, becoming a subscriber, and sharing the video on social media. That all goes a long way in growing this great community, guys. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see ya!